Good morning and welcome to the Harvard House Money Morsel. Good morning and welcome back to the Money Morsel. You'll notice a little change in the lineup this morning. It's cold in Howick this morning, so Robin hasn't got out of bed yet. Robin's on holiday. So I'm joined with Nick this morning. And Nick, today we're going to talk about some interesting market movements yesterday. Generally the market was under pressure, but Anglo American was up 16%. Why?
Yeah, so we woke up yesterday, normal morning, and suddenly, as the market opened, Anglo shot up 13% and then right up 18% or so. What was behind it was a bid by BHP Billiton, the largest miner in the world, to take out Anglo's totally. And the bid was at a decent price compared to where Anglos have found themselves recently. But was it enough is the question.
So Nick, just explain, in very sort of simple terms, just the mechanics on what BHP is proposing.
So it's an all-share deal, so it's 0.71 Billiton shares for every Anglo share. But there are conditions, and the main conditions are they're not interested in the South African mining side, which would be Kumba iron ore. Anglos own 80% of Kumba, and Amplats, Anglo Platinum, and Anglos own 70% of that. So they're asking Anglos to de-merge from those two, and then they'll take the rump, as it's called.
Yeah. So it's an interesting. For anybody who's invested in South African markets for a long time, the potential loss of Anglo American is a real. It's an icon. This country was almost founded on Anglo American and the mining industry, so it is really at the end of an era. But Nick, why do you think that mining companies are now? What's prompted BHP to make the bid? Why is there a scramble for assets?
So the bigger picture is 2050. The carbon or the decarbonisation targets are massive, and the quickest way to get to those targets is through electrification of everything. So going away from burning coal to solar, wind, electric vehicles. We know the story it's well known, but copper forms the basis of electrification. That's the core ingredient. It transmits, or it works under very high temperatures. It's malleable, conducts electricity the best, and it fits in terms of the EV cars. It's 80 kgs per car worth of copper, which is 3 to 4 times more than your normal internal combustion engine. So copper demand is huge, and there's a shortage globally going out to 2050. One crazy stat is that it's 53 million tons a year is going to be demanded by 2050. And just to put that in perspective, from 1900 to 2021, the combined copper used in those 121 years is less than that.
Than that amount. Yeah, so it's really interesting. There certainly is a demand for copper, and to bring new copper mines on stream can take at least 10 years. Anglo has probably got one of the best copper profiles at the moment. They brought on a new copper mine called Quellaveco last year in Peru, which is just ramping up production. But it was interesting that this week there's another little junior mining company listed on the JSE called Copper 360, and they basically poured and exported their first copper out of the Northern Cape in 21 years. And so changing technology, improved economics, higher prices do make some ore bodies that are previously unexploitable, viable again. And so, it's an interesting time for copper markets and for that whole industry. And if you look around the world, all the new copper mines are basically, there's no really big new copper mines on the horizon. And if we think of the demand of where it potentially has to go, it's certainly something to watch. Nick, apart from obviously the deal, do you think it's go ahead? What about, Anglo's is essentially the sort of lady at the ball. Are there other Prince Charmings around?
Yeah, I think that is the big question. Although the share price ratcheted up, I think we've got to look at it in context. In 2022, when the Ukraine war broke out, all of Anglo's metals shot to sort of record highs, and its market cap reached 66 billion, which is way off where it is at the moment. So Billiton have come in at a strategic time. There's a lot of weakness. I know the share price has halved between the highest point last year and the weakest point this year. It's halved, so they have come in at a time where it's extremely weak. Anglos know this, and I know that the other suitors, Glencore, which is a big, they've got a massive copper side, will no doubt be very interested. And at the end of the day, it's about synergies. How much can you extract from a deal like this? In mining, if you've got adjacent mines to your competitors and you take them over, you can extract great synergies. And Glencore does have this in South America, and they also have a massive trading arm. So although they're not the largest by market cap, they're the largest by revenue, and that's driven by, in part, their ability to trade metals on the market. So they could extract potentially better synergies, and might come in with a cheeky offer much higher. But it's a lowball offer.
Yeah.
That's what it's been referred to. As you would if you're buying a home, you're not going to offer the highest price. You're going to come in low and see where it ends.
See where you get. Absolutely, there's no point giving your best offer right at the outset. But I think what it does show in this situation is that sort of mining M&A is back on the sort of table, and unfortunately, it has some connotations for SA. Anglo might be delisted. Yes, Anglo Platinum and Kumba would remain listed, and those shares would be given to shareholders. And it is, the headlines this morning are all screaming about essentially BHP's bid for Anglo is a massive vote against SA. And it is, Billiton, BHP, doesn't have any mining assets in SA. Actually, it might be the topic of next week's Intuition, where we just go back and review some of the history on the mining side, because it's really interesting. It's quite incestuous, and some of the assets kind of swirl around and around in the washing machine, and they're in this company 20 years ago and they still end up in the same company 20 years later through a whole series of acquisitions and demergers. But it does have some negative connotations. Anglo being delisted from the JSE wouldn't be great for liquidity and for the local market. The flip side is that I think there's a good likelihood that De Beers gets relisted, because BHP certainly wouldn't want De Beers. But Anglo was already reviewing its stake in De Beers anyway, and thinking about options there. So I think maybe the point on this is that M&A always gets the market quite excited, share prices rally, and there's a lot of jostling around, which gets everybody very excited. But there's probably quite a lot of water still to flow under the bridge on this particular deal, and there's quite a lot of implications. And yes, there will be some regulatory approvals and things like that. So I expect this to keep the headlines active for quite a long time. But yes, there are some negative connotations for SA, but at the end of the day, you can read into those connotations, and people can say it's a massive vote of no confidence in SA. But at the end of the day, mining companies are there to grow, and Anglo's got a good suite of assets. And if Anglo hadn't internationalized all those years ago in 2000, they wouldn't be in this position to do it. So I think you always have to keep these things in context. But it's exciting times. It also just shows that there's a lot of stuff going on in the background with the change in AI. We haven't really talked, and we're running out of time now, but we haven't really talked about the copper demand from AI and data centers and what's coming through from that side, Nick. But that's another huge source of copper demand, and for materials in general. So mining might seem like a forgotten industry, but I remember having lunch with the CEO of BHP many years ago, early in my career. It was actually Brian Gilbertson at the time. I'm sure all the people will remember that name. And everything was about tech, and cell phones were. We didn't have smartphones back then, so I'm showing my age a little bit now. But everybody had a sort of cell phone, and it was all about Nokia and all those kind of things. And he just sat there at the lunch and he said, "You just have to remember that that your cell phone and your internet and all the other little gadgets that we were playing with at the time require my copper and my nickel and my iron ore to make them. And so don't write the mining industry off." And essentially it's come, that is as true today as it was 25 years ago, Nick.
Yeah, the Magnificent Seven that we've talked about, that shot the lights out on the NASDAQ, they need cloud storage for all their AI. And so electricity demand from data centers is 2% globally of electricity, and that's set to go to 4% in the next 2 years, which is massive. So data centers tied to the cloud, tied to artificial intelligence, mining is becoming sexy again, I think.
Yeah. Super, Nick. Thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend, everybody, and we will look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.